I have. Do you have any?
Sorry?
Do you have any poaching incidents that you can discuss with us today?
Yes, and thank you for the introduction. I've been an entrepreneur for a little over 5 years in the dry cleaning business. And quick story, when I first came into the dry cleaning business, my dry cleaner, as well as some of my pressers, approached me to let me know that another dry cleaners had offered them more money in order for them to go work for another dry cleaner. Years later, I actually found out that it wasn't that he actually wanted them to work for him, but he was trying to drive up the cost of the employees to try to price me out of the business. Fortunately for us, we had created a culture that provided more than just money. As a business owner, anti-poaching agreements are a good thing because we spend less time having to be concerned about whether or not our employees are going to leave due to what they're being paid. But as an employee, the anti-poaching probably isn't a good thing because it kind of puts a cap on how much an employee can make based on an agreement by employers. And with that, I'm gonna pass it to DeAnthony so he can give you a couple definitions on business poaching or poaching as it relates to business.
All right, thank you, Melv. I appreciate that story of yours. So poaching definition as it relates to business is to take and acquire talent in an unfair or secretive way. So for anti-poaching, it's basically to prevent, it's not necessarily any laws that are put in place for this to stop happening, but there's agreements, clauses, and pacts that happen between companies in order to prevent this type of poaching going on. As Mel said in his story, the other business tried to poach a technique to drive his business expenses for his employees up. There's poaching techniques used in companies that include offering higher salaries, benefits, culture atmospheres to attract, different atmosphere, incentives, and better quality of work environment. So those are just some of the techniques companies use, and companies use this because they're in competition with each other in order to either try to put a company out of business or to gain an advantage over them. But this could be, difficult for smaller companies that don't have that big capital like larger companies because the expenses is greater for them when trying to train or acquire talent employees. So you can see how this kind of benefits for smaller companies to have this is great for them. And I'll go ahead and open this up for questions, and Mel will lead the questions.
All right, I have a couple questions for the class, and feel free to either raise your hand or just pop in, turn your mic off, and let us know what your thoughts are. So, question for the class: what is your idea of business poaching, or what do you think as a business, or what do you think would be considered poaching as it relates to business?
In your own words. Yeah.
All right, class. So make sure you're unmuted.
Thomas.
So like stealing talent from a different competitor to give yourselves like a boost because now you have someone from somewhere else that has the same knowledge as your company, and now you have more talent within yourselves.
Absolutely. Like in the story that I kind of laid out, we have employees, and we've had employees for each one of my employees has been with my company for over 10 years, and just the knowledge of our working business to have them leave and go to another company would be detrimental to us, but it would also be beneficial for another company. Just having that knowledge and experience of the industry or whatever industry you're in is always a plus.
Like you guys spent all that time and energy into training them and teaching them the trade, and then they just leave.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Which brings us to our next question. Are you for or against poaching?
I would say I'm against it because employees are like the biggest asset of a company, and taking that away from a company can severely hurt your competitive company.
And who's answering that question? I'm sorry, I can't see.
Oh, this is Kayla, sorry.
No worries, Kayla.
I had a family member who worked in the engineering field, and they would go like back and forth to companies. So it wasn't like they were being poached. They would get paid more, but they gained more experience. So I guess I'm kind of for it in a way.
And make sure you guys introduce yourselves when you talk. I'm sorry, I can't see who's talking.
Hi, it's Daniel Lofe.
Hi, Daniel. So is there?
My name's Tony. I was going to say, My name is Tony. I would say I'm actually for poaching as well, just for the fact that it creates competition, and I think that it raises the standard that companies have to set for their employees to make an environment where they want to stay. At least it can. Otherwise, it can just turn out being greedy, and then you can go work for a company that might have paid you more, but doesn't have a good working environment like you had before.
Absolutely, and like I kind of explained in my story, part of the reason that the employees didn't leave is because of the culture that we were able to create. Now, they would have been able to make more money at the other place, but our situation was a little different. We have, they got paid a fair salary, but we treat them more like family than we do like employees. And a lot of employees, or a lot of people who are working, they look for stuff like that. They look to be able to come to work and not be bothered, to be able to just do their job and go home. Stuff like that is important to people who are working for companies.
I have a question. So what it sounds like maybe we're kind of mixing up terms of poaching and just like recruiting. So what's the difference between a company just going out there and recruiting employees who are talented and poaching?
Well, recruiting
This is Tanya, by the way.
Recruiting and poaching in my mind are kind of like the same thing. Their poaching is more, again, poaching to me is a little more unethical, because it's kind of sneaky and it's kind of behind the employer or whoever the person is employed by his back. Recruiting is more open form. It can be sent as a memo, or it can be posted on the board that particular company is trying to fill a specific position. Whereas poaching, it's kind of reaching out to the individual without the company's knowledge.
Yeah, they're going for, just to add on, they're going for a key asset within that company that they know is beneficial to that company. So they're using different techniques in order to acquire that certain piece, or that MVP.
So, another question, Hannah? Or comment?
Yeah, well, I was just gonna make a comment. My name's Hannah. I was just thinking, I don't really consider, I think it's fine unless you're poaching someone you're in a business relationship with, like partners or vendors and such. Otherwise, I don't think it's completely unethical. I think it's just healthy competition.
Well, absolutely. And that actually leads us to the third question. What ethics violations, if any, would be violating if an anti-poaching agreement had not been agreed to?
And we have to just do a quick answer. If one person can answer that just quickly, or comment on that quickly, and then we're out of time.
Well, real quick, there are no legal ramifications to the ethics, the anti-poaching pact. There were a couple companies who did get sued by a large group of I believe it was engineers to try to do away with the anti-poaching pacts, but in the end, the companies were able to, from what I understand, the companies were able to hold on to the anti-poaching pacts in order to put a cap on salaries and training and things as such, so that they can continue to not poach, I guess.
All right, we're gonna have to end it there. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Venture Vets. So it looks like great job. I'm going to show everybody how to, if you don't know how to give a little clapping reaction, yay. At the bottom, there's a little reaction. So, all right, wonderful, great job. Good, we were almost right there in time. I'm going to encourage the change team to go ahead and get your videos up and running. So I just want to let everybody, or your screen up and running, I want to let everyone know that by contributing to these presentations today, I'm making note of everybody who contributes, and so you'll be able to make up. So if you've missed some points during the semester, you'll be able to make them up that way. Great job. The change is ready to go. And I should have said this before, but I will let you know if we are going over in time. I'm going to try to stop it right at the 8. But great job, Venture Bets. Thanks for going first. And Change, thank you for being so understanding and willing to go second. And whenever you are ready and your screen is shared, we're ready to go. I'll remind all of you who are on the Change to unmute your microphone, unmute your video, and everyone else to do the opposite. And we're ready to go.
Alrighty, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Hannah, and our presentation topic today will be offshoring. Sherilyn.
Hi, I'm Sherilyn.
I'm Kayla Fabula.
I'm Jocelyn Me. And all right, so to kick it off, I'm gonna start by explaining to you guys what offshoring is and why companies choose to do it. So offshoring is the process of businesses bringing work overseas to other countries. This is most likely done in an effort to save money, and it's commonly used in businesses like manufacturing and in labor or parts, so like metals or like electrical parts. And then a little bit in why companies choose to do offshoring is that the labor in other countries is often cheaper. Also, the materials are often cheaper, and companies do this because they end up saving money in the long run, and they increase their profits when they spend less money on capital. And then another reason that they do this is because it increases their opportunity to internationally expand their company rather than just staying in the one country. They can expand globally, and by going overseas they can actually search for more talent outside than just the one country. And then lastly, another reason that companies go offshore is because other countries typically have less strict environmental laws and higher expectations within the in comparison to the United States. So there's a little bit less incentive to keep production within the United States because they don't have to worry about things like meal breaks, like paying fair wages, or having like employee benefits like health benefits or insurance or things like that. So now that you guys have a little bit of background on what offshoring is, I'm going to hand it off to Kayla, and she'll tell you about some companies that participate in offshoring.
So many of us know what the company Apple is, but many of us might not know what Foxconn is. Foxconn is actually a contractor for Apple located in China who makes their electronics such as their phones. Foxconn has been known to have unsafe working conditions, so Apple has developed a supplier code of conduct for all their contractors to follow. Since 2007, they have published their supplier reports, and they have found that more than half of their suppliers have at least one violation each year, such as 60-hour work weeks, getting paid less than minimum wage, and many of them have very unsafe work conditions. Apple insists that all these will be corrected, but former managers of Apple have claimed that Apple is more interested in less cost, better quality, and how fast they can actually get their supplies out. So many companies have issues with offshoring, and for this, Jocelyn will discuss more in depth about the ethics of offshoring.
Thank you, Kayla. Okay, so although offshoring can be beneficial, it can also be ethically questionable. So due to offshoring, there would be a loss in American jobs, which means if a company decides to switch their production to another country for cheaper prices, those current workers would be laid off. And for some workers, their only source of income would be cut off as well. Offshoring also leads to the tendencies for companies to rely on sweatshops, which are known for questionable employment treatment and low wages. Due to relaxed labor laws in certain countries, companies could get away with cheaper prices but end up supporting unethical practices. Offshoring would also support high pollution levels, since companies who manufacture for cheap would not consider upgrading their machines or turning to green technology, especially when using coal would be more cost efficient for them. And I know there is a coal dumping issue in third world countries from China. So I'll pass this to the questions that we'll be asking about offshoring, which Hannah can start, or Brandon.
So Brandon actually is on a phone call with his boss right now, so I'll do question 1 for him. Our first question is, do companies like Apple have an ethical obligation to their contractors' employees?
Are you asking that to us?
Yes.
Yes.
So, hi guys, I'm Thomas. So if there's a contract already set in place, I do believe that they should be able to honor these contracts in these countries. But once it's overseas, it's kind of dealt with the country and their government and what they allow or not. So I feel like it's kind of like on both sides. But if there is a contract already set, it should be like followed. And if they have issues, they can always go to a different company, I guess.
We do also believe the same thing. It is very hard for companies to try to follow through overseas because it's more difficult for them to go to the companies and actually see to make sure they're like following through. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to state about this question?
I was actually going to say the same thing.
Yeah.
As long as the company's following their code of conduct or their ethics, then it should be fine. But I think they should. I think there are ethical obligations that they should hold their contractors to, so that their employees can follow along those same lines.
Yeah, and then overall, like if they're making sure their contractors are staying ethical, they'll make their company as a whole more ethical because all their products are coming to the customer like ethically.
And don't you think that there's maybe sorry, this is Tanya. Don't you think that there's some sort of, I mean, wouldn't companies just want to do this? Because if they're unethical, if they're offshoring and their subsidiaries are unethical, there are major ramifications, right?
Yes.
Definitely.
Our second question is, should companies have a set of ethical standards for all their operations to follow worldwide? So that is going off of kind of what we just talked about. And so with a company trying to set standards worldwide to look as a more ethical company in a whole, it becomes a little more difficult, but I do believe overall that they should have those set of standards.
I believe so. This is Melvin, by the way. I believe so too. I think every company that does offshore should have a set of ethical standards, just for the human aspect of it. You got to make sure we're taking care of us as human beings.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, this is Jacob. I wanted to say that I think that if it's already somewhat frowned upon for companies to like offshore their work to other countries. So I think at a bare minimum, the least they could do is create some kind of ethical guideline that other countries are going to follow if a company is going to be using their country to manufacture or supply work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this kind of ties into our last question as well.
We're just about out of time, so if we can just answer this last question very quickly with one sentence.
Okay. So should the ethical standards of a company be lowered into a particular country to follow their norm?
All right, so my whole idea is the reason why people are offshoring is because they want the best price possible. And I'm not saying it's ethical, but the whole point is to lower the price for consumers. And so they have a higher profit, the companies. So if the country's legal ethics or laws are here and they meet them, I feel like it is legal. I'm not saying it's right, but to give us the best price, which is what they're trying to do.
Is that the whole point though? Is that really the whole point, or is that the whole point that they slap on it? Or is it really about profit? I mean,
yeah, they want to make the most money and they want to lower the cost for the consumer. So it's a little of both. It's kind of a little bit on both ends. But the whole point of offshoring is to do this. So
well, yeah, that could be said as the point, or that could be the point that the company put out on the front. I mean, what the point could be, well, anyways, I don't want to get, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get into a major discussion there. It was actually a great point there, Thomas. No, good job, everyone. Excellent. We're out of time on that one. Great job, everybody. Do we have somebody who wants to go next? But you're right. That is the purported point. So do we have a team that would like to go next?
I think we're willing.
And what's the team? What's your team name again, Thomas?
The Scholars.
Scholars. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and have you go next if you want to share the screen. And I want to remind everybody to watch your time. And when you're presenting, you don't need to go quite so long on the presentation and maybe more on the discussion. And I will try to stop getting involved with the discussion. You guys are doing such a great job. And I also want to remind everybody that when you are answering a question, please do introduce yourself so that we all know who we're talking to. And whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and get started. Whenever you're ready. Are you frozen?
He's muted.
Okay. So remind you again,
Sorry.
if you're presenting, unmute yourselves. If you're not, mute yourselves.
My bad.
No worries. And I'll reset the clock and then you can start whenever you're ready.
All right. Hi, everybody. We're Team Scholars, and the topic we are discussing today is social media usage in the workplace. My name is Braden Griffith.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brenda Lee.
Hi, I'm Damian Miller.
Hello, guys. I'm Thomas Nixan.
And I'm Kiana Smadi.
All right, so social media usage at work. To summarize our case study, millennials and iGen are becoming the dominant labor force. They bring the notion that social media is part of the modern workplace. On the other hand, employers believe that social media is a form of time wasting or theft of their time. The ERC, or Ethics Resource Center, discovered that active social networkers are more likely to take and use company software and confidential information home with them without any type of notification to upper management beforehand. As an example of such
Can I just push a pause real quick there, Thomas? Can all of you please turn your volume down so that we don't have such a reverberation? So if you can turn the volume down on your computers, that way we don't have that. Yeah. And then I push pause on this so we can start back up again and you can take it away whenever you're ready.
All right. Am I echoing or are we good?
You're no longer echoing.
All right, cool. So an example of such acts would be if an employer would leave his or her current employment and join a competing company and uses old company proprietary software to help the new employer to gain a competitive edge.
So for our first discussion question, do you think having social media breaks at work is ethical? And if so, how much time should be spent on those breaks? So as a group, we've decided that a 2 to 5 minute break on social media per hour, depending on how labor intensive the job is, should be ethical and not a waste of employers' time. What does everybody else think?
This is Melvin. As an employer, I don't agree with that at all, because my employees have a very it's not super labor intensive, but I mean it's kind of a waste of time to just sit back and see what's going on in your social media, unless you're monitoring social media for the particular business that you're working at. If that page has a social media page or something like that, then yeah, I can see. But just to see if somebody posted a video or check your Instagram and pictures and stuff, yeah, nah. Not on my ballot.
I was gonna say, Melvin, on my company, it's the opposite. I want them checking all the time because we do have a very social media intense business and we need to know what's going on. So I actually encourage my employees to be on there even more than that. So, but it depends. And that's in one company. In the other company, you better believe that they're not gonna be in there checking their social media on my dime.
Hey, this is D'Anthony. It's kind of two-way part to it. I think it's ethical if it like Tanya said, if it's for a business that has that, go for it. That involves social media presence. But I think it's also unethical if you're on a job that's very labor intensive or some type of like construction type of job. You should leave it to your break. When you get your 15-minute break, that's where it should be. It shouldn't be every hour or something like that. So.
Hi, this is Jacob. I just wanted to say I work at a coffee shop. And I find that like when I have coworkers who spend even 2 to 3 minutes at a time just in the back checking their phone, it can cause orders to pile up. It can cause like a miscommunication between all the employees. So I feel like that is another type of thing that should just be left for the breaks. We're already given several breaks during the day. I think is perfect amount of time to be checking Twitter and Instagram.
Right, and what about when people do it while they're in front of the customer?
Oh yeah, that you can get written up. You can lose the whole store's social media or like phone privileges at that point.
At your company?
Yeah, at my coffee shop.
Yeah.
Real quick, this is Melvin again. Not to take up too much of your time, but you in California, you do have 2 15-minute paid breaks. So on those 2 15-minute paid breaks, you can do whatever you want on the company's dime.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt you guys. Great discussion, but we're running out of time and we need to move on to the next question. So I'm going to hand it off to Brenda.
Okay, so the next discussion question is, why do you think the heavy social media users are more likely to think they can use company software and confidential data for personal use? So as a group, we believe the answer relies on the millennials' desire for career advancement, meaning that their commitment to achieving their goals and dreams outweighs the loyalty to the company. So they don't mind keeping confidential information as long as it boosts their career in the long run. So what does the rest of the class think? Do you guys agree or do you disagree?
This is Kayla. So I think sometimes that people don't necessarily think that they're giving away confidential data like on social media, but my bosses were discussing that even if we take pictures with our name badges on, we're giving away what our name badges look, and then we can actually have external people copy our name badges to get into like the ballpark. So it can become a safety issue too.
Yeah, definitely. People may not be aware that they are sharing confidential data, and that's something to consider too. Does anyone else?
Can I add one little thing too? I think that also, this is Tanya, I think also, especially with the younger generations, they're so used to sharing everything that they don't even think anything of it, where, you know, some of the older generations, we don't do that. And so we think, wow, how could you possibly share this? This is very confidential and this is not appropriate. And they just think nothing of it.
Yeah, of course.
This is Jacob again. So I've worked in like the restaurant industry for a lot of my like working experience, and like even so much as like if somebody were to take pictures of somebody cooking the food in the back, they like to them they're just Instagramming or posting some like nice looking food, but they could be giving away their process, they could be giving away recipes without even really realizing it, and that can ultimately hurt a business that's trying to stand out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you so much everyone for participating, but because you're running short on time, we're going to go to the next question.
And for our last question, it is, do you think there is as much social media usage in other countries, or is it purely a U.S. phenomenon? Well, U.S. isn't the only country that uses social media, of course. There's many other countries that do use it as much as the U.S., if not more. And our group thinks that social media is increasing everywhere. What do you guys think about this or no?
I don't think it's strictly in the US. I think other countries use it just as much as we do. Maybe in like third world countries, they're probably not using social media as much as we do, but like Europe and all those countries over there would be using the same amount as we are right now.
And maybe the third world countries are even using it more. Who knows? I don't know exactly where different, you know, I'm thinking of some specific examples of people who are using it for social uprising and things like this. But anybody have any personal experiences in other countries?
Could I chime in here? As an example, I guess?
Yeah.
So I've been to the Middle East a bunch of times, and social media over there is banned. So what we use is like
a VPN.
VPNs and stuff, so that we're able to go onto social media without the country like stopping us to look at certain things. And it's kind of difficult, but people get to do what they want if they try hard enough.
And what do you use? I'm sorry, I missed.
VPNs. So it's a virtual server. So like I'll connect, like if I'm in the Middle East, I'll connect to like a European server, and I'll be able to go on Instagram and Facebook and stuff, and it won't be like monetized, like it won't be like controlled by the government. So I can actually post and see things that I actually want to be able to see, where the country won't let us do that.
Right, we find a way, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, hi. This is Sean. I just want to break off of that. When I recently visited Ireland, it's kind of like the same thing. Most people just use social media, but it's not like with the VPN where the government is controlling like the internet searches and all that. But most of the time, like nobody texts out there. Everybody is very just like involved over an application on their phone, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
What apps are they? I mean, which? Oh wow.
They use apps like it's literally called like Messenger. Like the old app that everybody used to use as a young child, like Kick, they use that app. Just like Instagram, Facebook, like they use that to communicate instead of like iMessage or like an actual cell phone, like to make a phone call and stuff like that. So that's just my opinion on what I've experienced. So yeah.
This is Lewis Denson. Yeah, like Thomas said, I spent a summer in China a few years ago, and just like in the Middle East, Instagram and Facebook is banned in China, so they have what they call the WhatsApp or WeChat, which is essentially the same thing as Facebook. It keeps everybody connected. But I also, back to the question, I think that, like everybody has been saying, it's not just a US phenomenon. Everybody uses it, especially nowadays. I think we even said in class, it's super important to have a website if you're going to start any business, especially now. I think that most companies have a link to their website on social medias like Facebook and Instagram. Even on WeChat, people can use that to communicate and post things about their own businesses or their personal lives.
All right, I think we're out of time with that comment, and I want to thank you all very much, scholars, for an excellent presentation. And I, who wants to go next? Who's feeling brave? Who wants to?
Jay and I would like to go next.
Okay, great. Oh, and I wanted to tell everybody, just so you know, the reactions at the bottom, the clap, if you want to clap or give thumbs up, you can do that to the teams. It's at the bottom of your screen if you're ever looking for that. And I think with the phones, you have to go to the participants to make it work. But at any rate, so which team is it? What's the name of your team again? I'm sorry.
We're the Red.
The Red, R-E-D?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, cool. All right. Red, and whenever you are ready, Jacob, you are welcome to take it away.
Jay, are you in here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, for sure. So I'm Jacob Kinsman, and this is Jay Labico. Our presentation is on employer data on personal devices. And with that, I'm going to toss it over to Jay for our overview.
Cool, thanks, Jacob. So today we're obviously in like a digital world where almost everyone is on their phone, but like in recent years, there's been like an issue with company data on employees' personal devices, which like the companies are still managing to protect. And such cases are like bring your own devices versus like company devices. So go ahead, Jacob.
Yeah, so in the United States, in the past couple of years, like it's called the BYOD, the bring your own device model, has become really popular. As of now, about 2 out of every 3 employees use either their own device or some company provided device for work, because companies find that it increases productivity and profitability while lowering costs, because employees can work remotely and oftentimes they use their own devices. But oftentimes this comes with a caveat, because most companies will require software be installed on any device with company data that allows the company to see whatever's on the device. They can track the device, they can access your personal data, and they can even wipe your device remotely, and a lot of times just without warning. And so with that, I'm gonna toss it over to Jay for our first question.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna ask you guys this. Say you're a manager for a company considering a policy to protect data on like employees' mobile devices. What kind of rights would you guys consider as far as, I guess, like protecting the data on employees versus, or protecting the data on employees' mobile devices versus having their own company devices?
This is Tanya. I have a question. I mean, is there a contract that employees sign that allows the companies to wipe their screen?
So a lot of times they're given a notice, and there are contracts involved. Like personally, like my dad works for a software company that works with the government, so he has apps on his phone that he was made known of. He signed what he was getting into. That basically just he almost gives away his phone to them.
Wow. So what's the question for the audience?
So like if you were to create a policy for this type of model, what rights would you consider in making your policy for the employees?
Right. This is Melvin. Is that for personal devices, or is that on like company issue devices?
It's for both. So if you were to allow a employee to use their device for company data and such, or whether it's a company provided device.
Hi, this is Sherilyn. I think that's something that's really important in like protecting the rights of like employees is like making sure that their information isn't being sold to like other companies for their own profit. Like I think Facebook had a problem with it or something like that in like selling their users' data. So I think that it's really important that people are knowing that their employers aren't going to be like giving out their information to other people to use.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's really important.
I think Jacob and Jay, I think that a lot of people don't even realize that this exists, that these kinds of things happen, and that companies can actually do this. I've actually I've worked with people who, without warning, without notice, without anything, they just woke up in the morning and their phone was empty. All of the pictures of their family pictures, I had one person had pictures of her new baby, everything just gone, and it was wiped out by the company, and it's legal. And so a lot of people don't realize that that's happening, and it was her personal phone, but she had just signed something when she was hired on with the company. So I think people don't realize how prevalent this is and that it's even happening.
Yeah, so in cases like that, the most notice people get sometimes is a company just saying, back up your phone regularly, and that's pretty much it.
Could I add a point to this?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
So I'm Thomas. So my dad works for a software company as well down here. It's called Broadcom. So they have a secure emailing network on phones that the company provides for them. So they have like a secure network, so like people can't get into it. Like they put a password that changes every hour. So he uses that for work, and I'm guessing they go through that and they have some policy where they can look at throughout all the data within that. But he also has a personal phone they have no connection with. So I feel like if a company is allowed to like go through your personal data and do this, that's fine. But that should be the phone that the company provides the employer. And if the employer has his own personal device, that has no relationship with the business and shouldn't be able to be looked at through their data.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So just to wrap up this question, some like the big like main rights to be considered would be like data privacy and even like location privacy too. Companies can have like we're all I don't know if you guys use like Find My Friends or like Find My iPhone. We're all pretty aware of where our peers are, so companies have that access too. So that's just something that should be considered.
Yeah, and oftentimes it's you don't even consent to it. So I think we'll move on to the next question. So what advice would you give or actions would you take to ensure that these policies are administered fairly to the employees? So like what measures would you take to, like if you were going to track data or look through data, how would you let the employees know that you're going to do it in not a shady way?
This is Melvin. I think I would not only have them sign something saying that they were aware, but I would definitely make sure that there's an understanding, like verbally tell them or make them take a class so that they know, so that if there is a point where they have to share data or where as a company you have to share data, then it wouldn't be a surprise.
I think that's a very good point, very good idea.
This is Sean, just going off of what Melvin said. So right now I don't have data or anything like that on my phone because just as some certain circumstances that have occurred over the past months. So it's kind of weird to me how this would apply to me. Like I'm just thinking of how the last question would apply to me. For like being an employee that doesn't have a cell phone that has data on it or like stuff like that, like would you still be willing to hire an employee that could consistently show up to his job although not having a cell phone that you could potentially do searches on, if that makes sense, if that question makes sense?
Yeah, no, I think something like that would really come down to how the company wants to handle that or how they do handle things like that. I think depending on the company, if they wanted to hire somebody really badly, but they didn't have access to their own device, they would probably provide a device in that case, because a lot of companies are able to.
I hope the company would provide me with a device if I didn't have a phone at the time. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, a lot of them there's a lot of company provided tablets and laptops, that kind of thing, work phones.
And just to add on with that, sometimes the companies, it could be a little difficult for them just because the devices kind of need to be on the same, I guess, like software or hardware or even anything like that, just to stay with all the updates where the company has, or if there's any new updates as far as like their policy goes, it could be a little bit challenging for the companies.
And you guys are almost out of time. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. I was just going to say you're almost out of time. If you want to just quickly wrap up with that last question and
yeah, this was our last question. So I think if there's no more questions, we're good to end.
Okay, I'd like to can I just say one thing? I personally think this is a little on the edge of Big Brother. And how much we let companies into our lives, we really have to be careful about, because, you know, we let people know how they can treat us, and that includes companies. And companies now are requiring from this working at home software where they take a picture of you every however many 45 seconds just to make sure that you're actually working. So, you know, these kind of things are, it's a little invasive. So
it's very Big Brother.
Yeah, very Big Brother. Yeah.
All right.
Great. Good job,
Thank you, everyone, for
Thank
listening.
you. Yes.
Thanks, guys.
Great job. Great job. And do we have somebody who is ready to go next?
Team Fair Pay would like to go.
Fair Pay. Okay, so go ahead and share your screen. Make sure that everybody is unmuted on the your end and muted on the other end. And I will say also, everyone who's make sure that you're sticking around, the rest of your teams. I'm going to be taking roll at the end, and we have one extra opportunity for some extra point at the end. And I am ready when you guys are.
Can you see my video while I talk over the slides?
Oh, there, say that again.
1 second. Is it showing my video while I talk with the slides?
I don't see a video. Oh, there you are, Tony. Yeah, I see it.
Okay, cool. Hi, my name is Tony Taylor. My group is called Fair Pay, and we're presenting on the topic of pay disparity in fast food. I have my teammates Gabriel Fitch and Christian going with me, and I'm going to pass it over to Christian to explain the overview of our presentation.
Yeah, so essentially we're going to be taking a look at the difference between what a CEO makes compared to the average worker. Specifically, we're going to be taking a look at the fast food industry. The major debate that comes along with this topic is, you know, you take a
volume. Sorry, we have a reverberation. Or the rest of the team, also Gabe and Tony, if you can turn your volume down so we don't have that echo.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, basically there are some people who feel like, you know, if you're a CEO and you've managed to reach the top level in a business like McDonald's, say, then you deserve to have that higher salary. Meanwhile, there are people who feel that, you know, say a single mother working at Chipotle, trying to support her family, they feel that the minimum wage is inadequate considering how much the CEO of that company makes.
All right, and then I'm going to take it off under our first question. Was under what conditions, if any, is it ethical for an employer to pay employees a wage low enough that full-time workers are eligible for public assistance? We found that the Yum brand CEO is the new CEO, but my data comes from Greg Creed, was the CEO of Yum Brands, which was Taco Bell, KFC, and Domino's. He was making over $1,000 for every $1 that an average employee was making under him. And that also included a lot of his employees that were working full time were making such little money that they were able to qualify for medical assistance, Medicaid, and food stamps. And then opening up a question to the audience, do you think that it's fair for companies to not pay their employees a livable wage where they have to rely on that? Or do you think that should be okay and that should be left up to the government to figure out how to cover Medicaid and everything for people that are working full-time jobs?
Hey, this is first of all, Tony, snazzy outfit. Glad you dressed up.
Thanks.
I do think it's not very ethical for for a company who brings in that type of money to have employees, whether they be in the middle of the chain, management, or down to the worker level, to be working for a company and not be able to make, not be able to maintain a living. I think it's very unethical. Very unethical practice.
Exactly, because not only is the CEO, if you look at numbers, his salary, just his salary is usually around, or was about 1.2 million. But then on top of that, other compensation that he would get, almost 4 million in bonuses alone, another 4 million in stock options, and then dividends as well. So if you just look at his salary, it doesn't seem like a whole lot, but when you quantify all of the bonuses he get, which is almost triple his salary, it doesn't really make sense on why he can't pay a livable wage for his employees.
Hi, this is Jacob. So I just wanted to throw in a personal anecdote. So my mother works for Dr. Bronner's Magic Soaps, and they follow it's called like a 5-to-1 pay model or something, where the CEOs can only make 5 times as much as the lowest paid person at the company, and their CEOs are still able to.
Oh, sorry, there's a really bad reverber.
Oh yeah, I'm hearing that too. Basically, like the CEOs are still able to make like a high salary in the millions. They almost make as much as the same guy, and they're able to pay a livable wage with insurance to companies. So I would say it is unethical to not pay these livable wages.
Yeah, I agree. Alrighty, guys, thank you for your input. I'm going to pass it on to Gabriel Fitch for his take.
Great, thank you. My question was, under what conditions, if any, is it ethical for a CEO to make 1,000 times more than the frontline workers in an organization? What economic value do you bring to the marketplace? What you get paid is basically the service you bring to the market. If you work the drive-through at McDonald's, you get paid for working the drive-through at McDonald's. If you're the CEO of McDonald's, therefore you manage all of the drive-throughs in the thousands of locations that employ thousands of people worldwide. Therefore, you bring more economic value to the marketplace, and you get paid more. Your pay is not your worth as a human being, and nor should it be. You have great value as a human being, but your pay is based on economic value that you bring to the market. My question for the class is, do you think that fast food workers should be paid according to what their economic value they bring to the table?
This is Jasmine. So I'm a fast food worker too. I've experienced this too, and what you said, I totally agree with. I just also believe that companies have the responsibility to also give their employees benefits too. So McDonald's offers tuition assistance, which is great. But yeah, I totally agree that CEOs bring a lot more to the economy, so they should get paid a lot more. But yeah.
Well, that's great. That's a great perspective for somebody that's actually working in the fast food industry. Thank you.
And can I make a quick comment here as well? I think that we also need to consider that many of the workers are, and I think you pointed this out, they're being paid such a small amount that they're actually receiving government subsidies, government, basically welfare.
Yeah, it actually comes to over $7 billion back in 2018. And I think that's where the ethical dilemma lies, is because it's putting the responsibility on the government to cover their Medicare and everything like that.
Right. So we're essentially paying the salary, not the CEOs.
Exactly.
When you look at Jeff Bezos, who's making something like $9 million an hour, but then the vast majority of the Amazon workers actually qualify for Medicare. Who's paying their salary? Not him, but us. Because we're subsidized.
All right, thank you everybody for that.
Thank you, everybody.
And now on to Christian.
Yeah, so my question was, are there as large of pay disparities in other countries, or is this purely a US phenomenon? So I was actually surprised while researching for this to find that the US has the highest gap between CEO and worker pay out of any country. But this isn't a problem that's exclusive to the US. It's also, there's also a large degree of pay disparity in India, the UK, South Africa, and China. Just to put it into perspective, in 2018, if you made $1 as a worker in the US, that would correlate to your CEO making about $265. Meanwhile, in China, a worker making $1 would correspond to about $127 for their CEO. So that's about a $138 difference between the US and China when it comes to pay disparity. Of course, some countries have better gaps in this regard. Denmark, for instance, is famous for having powerful worker unions. In Denmark, McDonald's employees make $21 an hour or $45,000 a year and have 5 weeks of paid vacation. And so, meanwhile, in the US, workers have to rely on support of lawmakers if they want to do things like increase minimum wage or affect the conditions of fast food workers. And the question that I would like to pose is how you guys feel about workers' unions here in the US, specifically when it comes to fast food.
Hi, this is Melvin again. I don't know much about the fast food union, but I do, or fast food workers union, but I did work for UPS a long time ago, which is their loaders and their drivers are part of a union, and you have to, in order to be in the union, you have to pay, weekly or however often you get paid in order to be involved in that union. And in some of those jobs, if you're not making a lot of money, those union dues they hurt a lot. That's a lot, and in a lot of those lower earning jobs, you'll see people even deny like medical coverage and dental coverage, because they're trying to take home as much as they possibly can, and then to add on union dues is not very attractive.
Yeah, hi, this is Jacob. I wanted to go off of what Melvin said. I think that the idea of these unions to fight for people to get the kind of the benefits that they need and deserve is good, but I think the execution is kind of their downfall. Like he said, these high union dues that people have to pay on it. Like even if sometimes people are even forced into unions if they want to work in a certain field, and it inevitably hurts them more a lot of the time.
So I know we're out of time here, but I just I would also like to maybe just quickly say that unions, the point of a union is to give collective bargaining or power to people who don't have power. So employees don't have power when it comes to because they don't have the money, right? And so I agree, but maybe there's a better way. I don't know what it is, but yeah, unions are strife with issues. Anyways, this is a wonderful debate. As usual, you guys are really doing just a great job and bringing up some great points. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Excellent job.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
So remind every single one of you, whether you're presenting or not, when you have your microphone on, make sure that you turn your volume down, please, so that we're not having that terrible reverberation that we all have to listen to. So microphone on, volume down. All right, so who's next? Who's next?
Can we go next?
I'm sorry, I didn't know who was talking there.
Natalie.
Natalie, and the name of your team?
The Jets.
All right, so go ahead and share your screen and we'll get you set up to go.
Okay, hi guys, we're the Jets. Does everyone have their video on my team?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
This is Jasmine.
Okay. And then just Dan.
So, let me go ahead and stop the timer. So are you guys ready to go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is Dan
Yeah.
here?
Yeah. Sorry, say that again?
Okay, there he is. Oh, we were just waiting for Dan.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds good. So I'll
Okay.
go ahead and start the clock when you guys start.
Okay. So, hi guys, we're Discrimination Against the Unemployed. I'm Natalie Serrano.
I'm Jasmine DeVera.
I'm Tang Law.
And I'm Daniel Ofen.
And Jasmine's going to be talking to you guys about the background.
Okay. So managers that are hiring tend to choose job applicants with more recent work experience. While it benefits the company to hire someone with a better track record, the question is it discriminating to choose the person who had recently worked over a person who has been unemployed? So Natalie will introduce the next topic.
Okay, now Thana's going to be talking about our discussion questions.
Okay, so if the employer hiring policies gives preferences to those who are already employed, what is the impact on the company's performance? Workers seeking jobs, the communities where companies operate based on the impact of those policies. Would you say they are ethical? Why or why not? So like, what do you guys think about if it's like ethical or?
So maybe if you could break this down for us a little bit and not have so many questions at once. What question are you asking us?
The first question. So like, if the employer's hiring policies gives preferences to those already employed, what is the impact on the company's performance? Workers seeking jobs, the communities where.
In your own words, can you ask the question? What are you asking in your own words? What are you asking the audience?
Oh, well, like, if they're like if this like question is ethical.
So like, how does it impact the company, the workers seeking jobs, and the communities?
This is Melvin. I don't think it impacts the company's performance if the company who's looking for an employee has a job or not. I mean, it's usually the company screening process to determine the best candidate for the job, and I don't think it matters whether or not the candidate has a job or not, as long as they can do the job that they're applying for.
I agree with what Melvin just said. I don't think the person needs to have prior work experience in order to do the job that the company is asking, unless it's like a job that requires like a college degree or something of that sort of nature. But if it's a job at like Chipotle and it's your first time working for them, like, or first time ever having a job, I believe like the employer should be pretty lenient on making you a decent candidate for the job. You know what I'm saying? Because like that person, like making food, like anybody can make food, but not everybody can be a mechanical engineer like right off the bat. Like they have to go through years of training, obviously have a degree. So that's my opinion of what Melvin just said. So,
and I think that this is Tanya. I think that the issue here is we're talking about can companies discriminate against people who have a gap in their resume? So can they say, I don't want to hire somebody because they haven't been working. I'm only going to hire people who have been working, because obviously if you haven't been working, you're not the best worker out there, right? The best worker keep their jobs. But is that really fair? Because
no,
it's happening right now.
I believe it's not fair, just because like for my circumstance, like I'm obviously going to have a gap in my resume from my previous job until now because of like circumstances, and like everybody has different problems in their life that occur. Right. So I believe that it'd be unfair to judge somebody based off a gap in their resume. That's what the question was.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. I guess I didn't read the question right, but yeah, I don't think like gaps in resume, for me personally, they're not a issue. I would rather base who I bring in on the not just the performance, but the person. I mean, people can have gaps in their resumes for anything, and unless you're screening that person correctly, then I mean, you can have a gap in your resume for going to combat or being injured for a year and a half and not being able to work. But unless you're screening that person when you bring that person in for an interview, you're not going to know that.
This is Lewis Denson again. I agree with what Melvin said. People go through stuff. Even for me, I took a break off of school because I was wasting time with every semester. I would add classes and then I'd get burnt out. So I had to take some time off and focus on my priorities. And now that I'm ready to come back to school, I've got a new drive for it. So with a lot of people, if they're going through something personal or completely out of their hands, they might still be willing and ready to work. as well as a lot of companies have a probational period. So once you're hired, then you can have the chance to prove yourself. But I think having a gap or anything like that, it doesn't affect the individual's work ethic.
All right, moving on. Do you guys have more questions or?
So basically the problem with the discrimination with people that are unemployed is it's becoming more and more common every year. And so it's said that after about 1 month of a gap on your resume, it immediately, a lot of employers will put the application aside. And so this is a problem that we need to try to fix, because at the moment there's no federal laws. There's a couple laws that try to prohibit companies from advertising, saying if you don't have work experience, you can't even apply. But other than that, there's no social awareness yet. So I think it's important that we try to make it a bigger deal, because even 10 years ago was like the first anti-discrimination laws with gender, race, and disabilities. And that was in 2011. So it's just something that we should try to make more aware to everyone, so that maybe we could slowly push employers from away from this unethical behavior.
Yeah, and especially now, right now, with everything going on, I'm sure a lot of people are out of a job. So when they go to apply for jobs, employers will, they should be a little more considerate about the gaps.
And just to clarify, there was an executive order, President Obama's executive order, which made it illegal to consider gaps when hiring. But then Trump, when he took office, he actually got rid of that executive order. So it's now legal again to discriminate based on gaps. So other questions? Is that the end of the presentation? Or?
And
we have one more question.
Yeah, one more.
Yeah. So, Tan.
oh yeah, so for the second question, honestly, do you guys think it's like right to discriminate like people who are like unemployed for a long time?
No.
It's like honestly, for people who like haven't been working or have like no experience, like there's like some employers who haven't who look at their resume and they just like pass it on like it was nothing, because they say like no work experience and it's like no point of hiring them.
This is Kayla.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. So this is Kayla. I think it all depends on the kind of job that they're applying for. So like if you're applying to be a bagger and they just put your resume aside because you have no work experience, I think that would be unethical. But if you're applying for like a management position and you have no work experience, then it would be totally appropriate to put the resume aside because you don't have any.
I don't think it's a work experience there, Kayla. It's a gap in the work.
Oh, the gap. So I think maybe so I think it does depend on the job though, because they want somebody like who has actively done the job in like a shorter period of time versus somebody who hasn't been doing this job for like 5 years or something.
I can agree with what you just said. I also believe that it does matter where you are applying and also how long the gap was, depending on what position you're applying for. Obviously, if you're applying for a management position and your gap in your resume is obviously fairly long, I believe an employer would most likely pass along your resume just due to the fact that you haven't been involved in any type of employment recently. So I don't think they'd want someone of that like non-experience, I guess, because I guess you lose experience over the time you're in that gap. So, I mean, hiring you at a management level, like, wouldn't make sense. It could potentially be a downfall to the company or the store that you're trying to attempt to run. So that's just my opinion.
Also, like over like a long-term period of time, a lot of policies change and like rules and regulations change. So if you haven't been working for like a long time, then you aren't like caught up on all these rules and regulations that you're supposed to be following.
That's true too. I agree with that as well.
I think the one thing that we have to consider though is that if there aren't jobs out there and there are people who are very, very well qualified and due to no fault of their own are now unemployed, we get into a self-perpetuating cycle where you can't find jobs and then they aren't hired and then they aren't hired longer. And then all of a sudden you have a huge group of highly qualified, unemployable people.
and then whose job is it to take care of them at that point? And society couldn't.
Yeah, I kind of agree with her. The whole point is if you have the requirements met, that there shouldn't be a determination if you can get the job or not because of the time you haven't been working. If you meet the requirements, you should be able to have as much ability to apply and have a chance to get the job as anyone else.
Yeah, and we saw this happen a lot with that last financial crisis, where there were people who are very, very well qualified that got passed over just because, no fault of their own, they lost the jobs because the economy was bad. So,
yeah.
Okay, thank you guys very much for excellent job. I think that's it. Did we get everybody? Did everybody present?
Yeah.
You guys not gone yet?
No, we haven't gone yet.
Oh, who's talking?
Lewis.
With what's the name of your team?
American Dreamers.
Oh my gosh, of course. Okay, so you guys are the last team, American Dreamers. Go ahead and share your screen, and we're ready for you when you're ready to go. Whenever you're ready.
Okay.
All right, so we are the American Dreamers doing the Thinking Ethically case on forced rankings. My name is Rich Del Rio.
Oh, I'm Lewis Denson, sorry.
And I'm Nolan Hubbard.
I'm James Audie. So a quick overview of the case. We're talking about forced ranking. Back in the 1980s, a guy named Jack Welch, he was the executive manager or officer for General Electric. He basically coined the term. As it is, a quick definition, it's an idea or a method where a company will rank all of his employees. So top 20% will be the outstanding employees. They get like bonuses, they'll get a lot of information, they'll get overall an advantage in the company. The middle 70% will be the average workers, the day-to-day workers. And the lowest 10 to 20% are the employees that they're deemed as below standards. A lot of times those employees are either harshly punished or even terminated during the time. There's a lot of big name companies like General Electric, like Microsoft, that they use forced ranking at some point. Some a little less nowadays because it is a big ethical issue with that last 10 to 20% that do tend to lose their job because of it. So I'm going to pass it over to Rich now.
All right, so for case question number one, there's about 3 parts to it, so I'm just going to break it off part to part. The first part of it says, based on the description of forced rankings here and in the text of the chapter, how fair would you say this method is to employees being ranked? I don't see how employees are going to thrive in an environment like that. Employees should focus on hiring and developing good talent to ultimately eliminate the chance of having those underperformers in the first place. But I believe it is not fair to the employees. The second part of the question says, how relevant to the organization's strategy? It is not relevant, really, how the employees feel. Their strategy is to maximize efficiency, which they believe to be doing by heavily rewarding their top performers and ridding their company of those underperformers. The final part of the question states, how useful for employee development? I do not believe this to be useful for employee development because it can lead to an uncomfortable work environment in the sense that employees wouldn't be working as a team. Especially if that means that would increase the other guy's paycheck over theirs. So yeah, what do you guys think as a class? Like, I'm gonna open that to discussion for a little bit.
Could I give a point of view? So what I think is, so competition is a benefit of companies. It brings out the best of the company, and if it's in the strong survive and the weak kind of perish. If people underperforming, I feel like they should be replaced at some point for someone that can do the job better, so the company can keep moving forward and up in the general scheme of things. You shouldn't want to keep someone who's I'm not saying you can't give them a chance. Give them a chance to see if they can move forward and improve on their job. But if they keep underperforming, I feel like you just have to get rid of them at some point.
All right, that's a good point.
And this is Tony. I was going to piggyback off of that. I actually used to work for Gordon Biersch, the brewery restaurant, and they would always hold little competitions to get people to sign up for their passport thing, which is basically like a promotional offer where you get free like desserts and stuff on your birthdays and promotional emails. And so it actually put a lot of competition on everybody. And although it seemed kind of healthy at first, the people who just weren't naturally good marketers and sellers, who could be also just good servers, were then put under a lot of pressure and then kind of ranked, which make you feel less good at your job. So it kind of brings down the morale of the company for certain servers who may not be as outgoing as others.
And then I wanted to just point out that I think that I want to make sure that people understood that in a true forced ranking, they're also called ranking yanks, the bottom 20%, it's not that they just lost, like, oh, you didn't win the competition. They're fired. Every year you fire 20% of your workforce in a true forced ranking system, the way Jack Welch set it up. So 20% of that workforce, if they cannot get into that middle 70, they're gone. And so, you know, it's a constant turnover of employees, and just, you know, you have to think eventually what's happening, you're probably firing people that are very good employees, but fall within that 20%. All right.
And not only that, though, you're not, sorry, this is Tony. I just didn't know that that was actually a thing, but you're not actually, I think you're spending more money to train people, or you could invest in people learning how to do their jobs better since they already know the company versus having to hire somebody completely new.
You can't imagine what their training budget was.
Yeah, during one of the articles that I was reading, a lot of the people were saying that many employees that would come into the company often got fired really quickly before they had any potential to actually show that they were a better employee. It does eliminate people who are at a disadvantage initially, and it continues to do so with anyone who comes in who doesn't initially like supersede the average, I guess.
That's a good point. I'm going to go ahead and move on to case question number 2 with Nolan.
Alrighty, so case question number 2. How fair are forced rankings relative to the other methods of measuring performance described in this chapter? So an example of forced ranking would be if you were inexperienced, or an example of someone being judged unfairly would be an example if they were inexperienced and were put to a certain task against a coworker with 5 years of experience, then the coworker with 5 years of experience would rank higher than you, which could be unfair for the employee. Forced ranking could also be unfair because the lower 10-20% of employees may not be the lowest quality of employees. So as a result, they could go to the competitor's business, which could result in a loss of highly skilled employees, and they could go to your competitors. So it creates unnecessary competition among employees. So although competition may be a good thing, too much can cause your employees to focus more on the social aspects than fulfilling their duties. And lastly, it can be unmotivating for your employees. Forced ranking can place employees in the lower 10% or 20%, even though they are trying their best, which can be frustrating for them, potentially resulting in them leaving. And I wanted to open up this question to anybody who had any comments or concerns.
What's the question you're asking us?
How fair are forced rankings relative to the other methods of measuring performance?
Okay. What do you think, class?
This is Gabe. I think that in certain atmospheres and certain workplaces that it's okay to have certain incentives. For example, if you're selling cars and it depends on how many units you're moving per month, and there's certain incentives that are given to the salesman or saleswomen, I think that's okay.
Definitely, and it can be in many cases, yes.
Oh, I was just going to say, I don't think that incentives are a bad thing and competition is a bad thing, but I do think that forced rankings is a very bad system, and I don't think that I don't think it has any place in business today, and I think that's why I mean, you look at your chart here, how many companies that are actually using forced rankings, and this was, I mean, the last chart you showed was back in 2012, and it's gone down that much. I think today that forced rankings is you know, all but disappeared because of this, and as evidenced by most of you have never even heard of it. So yeah. All right, so we're out of time. I think we're gonna have to end it there. Do you wanna just read through the last question? I don't think we'll have time to
Sure,
really.
I can do it briefly.
Okay, sounds great.
Yeah, so the last question is, at an organization that wants to use forced rankings because it supports this strategy, what measures can it take to make sure that the process is as ethical as possible? So a few different ways that the company could go about it is having the actual yank part of the ranking, I suppose, be carried out periodically rather than maybe every year. It'd be every 3 years. So it gives each employee, the ones that made it at least, a chance to recuperate and reassess their own strategy to further themselves in the business rather than worrying about the next year that's coming up quicker than they're ready for. Also, to rotate managed initiatives after you see an initial benefit from forced rankings, maybe change it up so employees aren't always trying to catch up to the next person, or make sure that they're solidified in that general 70% or the top 10%. Also, compare person to person rather than scale, because a lot of the times, like we've been talking about earlier, a lot of people go through different things that might influence them on how well they perform at work. But rather than just grouping everybody up together and just ranking them statistically, they kind of go through, and it would also help to have the employee and management have a more personal communication and relationship rather than just having everybody be a number and kind of just yanking them out without knowing exactly who they are, what they've been through, or what they can bring to the company.
Great, wonderful. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. So it looks like that's that for the team presentations. I want to thank you all for your hard work, and apologize, I'm not able to share my screen here. But if everybody in the room, if you could just maybe quickly go in there and just put one thing in the chat, just one little comment in the chat box. That would be great if you're able to do that. Let's see if I can do this here too. I'm having trouble with my screen all of a sudden. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can.
Me?
Miss Hertz.
Yes. There we go.
Our group actually didn't get the chance to present today because somebody in our group had to go to the doctor, like their doctor appointment at 3 p.m. they said. So is there any way that we could go on Thursday?
Yeah, let's talk afterwards. I want somebody else get going, but stay around so that we can chat, so that we can
All
chat.
right, yeah. I also sent you, huh?
I was gonna say, if anybody else has any questions, they can stick around too. I know most of you need to get going at 3 o'clock. Run, go. We'll see you all for the next class. When is our next class?
We're having a meeting on Tuesday of next week, correct?
Yes, we are having a meeting on Tuesday next week. Let me pull that up. Yep, so I will see everybody Tuesday next week at, what time is the class at? Is it 2?
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock. I'll see you all at 1 o'clock.
All right.
See you guys then. Bye. Sorry, I have 1,000 things going at once. So those who want to stick around and chat with me.
How do you make your, Professor, this is Melvin, how do you make yourself the host? Because if I end it, it's going to kick everybody out.
Okay, so just leave meeting, but don't end the meeting. All right, here, let me fix this. Maybe I can change you from. You got assigned host as I had to go to the other computer.
Yeah, you gave it to me.
Let me see if I can fix that. Can you end it? When you push end, it'll say either end meeting or leave meeting. Just
okay, yeah, I'll just leave.
Yeah, yeah. You can assign it to me. Thanks, Melvin. Okay, so who do I have here still with me?
Sean O'Connor here.
Okay, cool. And then who was it that didn't get to present?
That would be our group because somebody had to go to the doctor's appointment. It's just me and you in the chat now in the Zoom call.
And who was it that
So who's in our group? The 4 people in our group are Zach, Jacob Lofgren, and Palek. And I believe Jacob had to go to the doctors today. So we're practically pretty much done with our presentation, and we should have been ready to present today, but Jacob sent me a text like 20 minutes ago saying I have to leave for the doctors at 3, and I was like, okay, like come on now, we're about to present. Like I even have my my clothes on to present right now on my video.
Right.
Here, I'll start my video. I was ready, but I mean,
So-
I guess my group wasn't ready. Is there any way that we could go Thursday then?
So we're not doing a class on Thursday. We're doing a class again on Tuesday,
Okay.
which is the last class. Let me see. I don't know if we'll be able to do it or we're gonna have to do something else. You know what we're gonna have to do? You guys are gonna have to record your presentation. So you'll have
Okay.
to record your presentation, and then as soon as you get that done, send it to me. Yeah, so go ahead and send it to me, and if you can get it sent over by, by Thursday, that would be great.
Yeah.
And
Should
then,
I email it to you? Because I tried to email you and it didn't. I don't think I got a response from.
So what email address were you sending, and what was the question regarding?
It was
Because-
I sent it to the email that is on Canvas, and I put
Yeah,
the
you
subject
don't use-
line.
Yeah, don't use the Canvas email address. They're having issues with that. Use the email address that's listed in the syllabus.
Okay.
And it's tanyamariehertz@gmail.com, or you can do thertz@sdsu.edu, or any of the others. Just don't use the Canvas one.
Hertz at sdsu.edu. You said.
You can do thertz. Just look at the syllabus. Do the one in the syllabus.
I got you.
And
Okay.
then you can send that over to me, and send it by Thursday, and we'll go ahead and grade it that way. And
I have a question though, just based on, so you know how people were doing discussion questions with the class. Should we just discuss the questions ourselves through like a FaceTime call?
No, do the same thing.
of
You do
that
a
sort?
Zoom. No, do a Zoom just like you'd be doing it right here. You guys will have to actually set the Zoom up yourself and record it.
Okay.
And you can share it with me. So you'll just one of you will be the host for the Zoom and record the Zoom, and then some. It doesn't matter if that's the same person who's actually controlling the slides, but
yes,
have somebody else control the slides and share it, and you'll do everything except for the talking with the class. You can just present it as if you would be talking with the class, but then you won't have that discussion part. So it'll be a little bit shorter than the others, but it'll still be.
I have one last question. I'm sorry for holding you. So is there an option to screen record the Zoom conference, or should we just do it through like a phone? If
Nope.
that's
You'll do it through you'll screen record the Zoom. Just like when we record all of our classes, right? So like
oh
right
yes,
now,
perfect.